As soon as it was discovered that the United States was working on a high-speed, high-altitude strategic bomber capable of Mach 3, it became necessary that the Soviet industry construct a similar nuclear delivery platform to stay up with the United States. Sukhoi, Tupolev, and Yakovlev are all well-established names in the industry, submitted their designs in 1963 to satisfy the criterion. However, in 1964, the Sukhoi proposal emerged victorious over the competition. The aircraft, dubbed the Sukhoi T4, was the result. Intending to become a strategic bomber with secondary reconnaissance capabilities, the T4 was given several different program names, including Aircraft 100 and Project 100. The project was a difficult one that needed a substantial amount of finance and labor, in addition to completing a vast number of investigations and collecting data. Titanium was an essential material for high-speed and high-altitude operations, although it was difficult to work with and expensive to acquire. It was anticipated that the bomber would achieve speeds more than Mach 3, which added another layer of complexity to the design. The finished product was an aircraft that, in some respects, mimicked the design lines of the rival XB-70 in terms of shape. The cockpit for the two people sitting in tandem was located at the front of the somewhat straightforwardly constructed fuselage, followed by a long nose cone to preserve the aircraft's aerodynamic integrity when in flight. This was much similar to the Concorde supersonic passenger jet airliner. The jet's nose cone was designed to tilt downwards when the aircraft was on the ground, regardless of whether it was approaching the runway or taking off. When the nose was retracted, a periscope was used to examine what was in front of the vehicle. This was possible at speeds of up to 900 kilometers or 370 miles per hour. In contrast to the XB-70, which featured a total of 6 engines, the T4 featured only 4, and these were housed in underslung pods linked together and featured longer intake ramps that directed air into the turbofans. The same delta wing planform utilized in the XB-70 was employed in the Valkyrie. However, the wingtips of the T4 were fixed rather than folding like they were on the XB-70. Because of the adoption of the delta wing planform, no horizontal planes were included, and the only vertical fin was located at the vehicle's tail. An undercarriage resembling a tricycle was installed, with 8 wheels attached to each of the main legs and 2 on the nose leg. Even though the T4 was shorter than the XB-70 in length and wingspan, it was taller than the American counterpart by around 2 meters. An innovative fly-by-wire system with quadruple redundancy was installed on the aircraft's interior to assist the pilot in handling the complex design while it was in flight. In the event that the primary FBW systems were to fail, a mechanical backup strategy was also put into place. Drag chutes would be deployed by the crew in order to cut down on the lengthy landing rolls that were anticipated. These would work in conjunction with the normal wheel brakes that would be mounted on each landing gear leg. Production bombers would be equipped with standard equipment like ejection seats and pressurized systems for the cabin. Each of the 4 Kolsov RD-3641 series turbofan engines that provided the propulsion for the craft produced 35,000 pounds of thrust. Estimates of its performance included a top speed of 2,000 miles per hour or Mach 3.0. It also had a cruise speed of 1,865 miles per hour or Mach 2.8, a ferry range that extended to 4,350 miles, and a service ceiling that reached as high as 80,000 feet. It was presumed that the aircraft designed to carry strategic bombing missions would also carry conventional drop bombs in addition to the anticipated nuclear weapons load. As a result, cameras would be installed for reconnaissance work, and an anti-ship function was also discussed. This means that anti-ship missiles were another prospective armament suited for the enormous aircraft. But unlike most other Soviet-area bombers that flew during the Cold War, there were no plans to install defensive weaponry on board. During the course of the T4 project, work was done on a total of 4 airframes, with a 5th and a 6th being planned. The initial model was made available for evaluation in the fall of 1971, but the first flight was not accomplished until the 22nd of August in 1972. This was the day the first T-4, later named 101, made its first flight. Vladimir Ilyushin, whose father Sergei Ilyushin was a well-known aircraft designer, served as the test pilot, and Nikolai Alfirov served as the navigator. The testing lasted until the 19th of January in 1974. Only 10 flights for a combined total of 10 hours and 20 minutes were completed in the T-4. The Soviet Air Force had already planned to construct around 250 bombers of production quality that would conform to the standards set by the T-4 prototype. A piece of equipment of this complexity needed to be tested for a considerable time, and in 1974, the airframe was still being evaluated. One thing to note here is that the North American XB-70 program was canceled in 1961. It had become an expensive, albeit potentially fruitful venture. Also, developments in Soviet air defenses began to limit the effectiveness that a high-speed, high-flying bomber would have over the modern battlefield, so the program was canceled. The two prototypes were demoted to the rank of experimental aircraft. A collision that occurred in mid-air between one aircraft in June of 1966 permanently tarnished the legacy of the Valkyrie. After its time in the air ended, the second one was retired to a museum to be displayed as a relic. When it was determined that the expensive and technology-laden aircraft actually held little value in advancing missile technology, the Soviets eventually followed suit. They gave up on their pursuit of a high-speed, high-altitude Mach 3 nuclear-capable bomber. This occurred when it was determined that the pursuit of such a bomber would not advance missile technology. In addition, the Soviet Air Force had the ability to increase its capability quantitatively by increasing the number of smaller aircraft with designs that were less expensive per unit. This would be preferable to spending significant resources on a limited collection of heavy bombers. This was the case as the service instead proceeded with orders for fighter types. 1974 was when the Ministry of Aviation Industry issued an order to halt all development on the T-4 project, and thus the jet was discontinued on January 22, 1974, even though its performance capabilities were never properly tested. While the remaining prototypes were destroyed in the process, one T-4 managed to survive. The only prototype that was ever finished and could fly joined the XB-70 as a preserved showpiece at the Central Air Force Museum in Monino, located close to Moscow. The prototypes were given the serial numbers 101 through 106 when they were produced. Only 101 and 102 were physically constructed, while the other prototypes, 103 and 104, were in the process of being built, while 105 and 106 existed only on draft charts. This brings us to the end of this video. If you liked the video, please consider subscribing and sharing so we can keep bringing more content like this. Also, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. See you next time!